So tantamount to a declaration of war. The strong words from the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas after a day of violence in Jerusalem. First, a right-wing Jewish activist, Yehuda Glick, was shot by a Palestinian as he left a conference. Then, the Palestinian himself shot dead by Israeli police. There followed renewed clashes in East Jerusalem, a massive tightening of security by Israel, including closing off all access to the Al-Aqsa compound. Now, a highly symbolic site, of course, for both Muslims and Jews as well. That has now reopened, though. But in a moment, we're going to be discussing the problems in both Jerusalem and also in the second part of today's debate, talk about Sweden's decision to officially recognise a Palestinian state, Israel calling that decision deplorable. Joining us around the table in just a moment, actually, but first let's talk about who's in Brussels, because it's today's debate is Mark Ott, who used to be the EU Special Representative to the Middle East up until February 2011. And here on set is Gil Mihaly, who's an Israeli, who's editor-in-chief of Majid Masouddin, who's a member of the Front de Gauche here in France and also president of Observers in Palestine, and Julien Théron is a political scientist and advisor specialist in the Middle East at the University of Versailles. Thanks to all of you for coming in and joining us on the programme today. You can also join in the debate as well on Twitter using the handle #F24debate. We'd love to hear from you, so if you want to get in touch, anything that's said around the table, you can always let us know. Firstly, though, before we talk to our guests, let's get this report on the latest situation in Jerusalem itself. Here's Oliver Farry.
Police cordon off the scene of a shooting outside a far-right meeting in Jerusalem. A gunman on a motorcycle, whom police later stated had been killed, was believed to have shot a far-right activist. The victim was the American-born Yehuda Glick, who has campaigned for building a third temple on Temple Mount, Jerusalem's most sensitive holy site.
It's a result of the Israeli policy that not let Jews pray on the Temple Mount, a policy that sends a signal to the Arabs that they can continue attack in many ways those Jews who wants to go to the most holiest place, to Judaism on earth.
The holiest site in Judaism, and it is also considered the third holiest site by Muslims, who call it the Noble Sanctuary. The complex is open to Jews only at certain times, and they are not allowed to pray there. Recent high-profile visits of Israeli right-wingers to the site and a draft law giving Jews greater access have inflamed tensions.
You will clear out of Temple Mount. Even if we ignite the region, you will be gone.
There is nothing for the Jews there. It is a holy place for Muslims. You will clear out from there. You will not get near.
The announcement of a plan to build 1,000 new Israeli homes in East Jerusalem, especially in areas near the complex, has led to clashes between Palestinian youths and police. Control of the site has long been central to the fight for Jerusalem, the city both Israelis and Palestinians claim as their capital. It was a visit to the site by Ariel Sharon in 2000 that sparked the Second Intifada, in which around 4,000 people were killed over 5 years.
So let's talk to our guests. I'm going to start off with Gil Mihaly, Israeli, who's editor-in-chief of Causa. The Palestinian president calling the closure of this site a declaration of war.
I think that the Israeli position has many faults, but I think on Temple Mount it's quite solid. Ever since Israel occupies the old city of Jerusalem and Temple Mount, it recognized the absolute priority of Muslims on Temple Mount. I don't think that in a similar situation, Jews will be allowed to have such a privilege. And even the right-wing activists, what they say, that they want also the right to pray there, and this right is denied by the Israeli government. So ever since '67, for the last 47 years, the Israeli policy is, because this is such a sensitive question, we don't change the situation. Jews are allowed to visit the Temple Mount only as tourists and not allowed to pray there. And although this is the Israeli policy for 47 years, the Palestinians, which have many other subjects, many other questions where the arguments are very strong, they keep banging on these questions because, with bad faith, because they know it mobilizes the Muslim masses. It's a very sensible, very sensitive question.
So why close it today?
Sorry?
Why close the site today?
Because there was danger of escalation and violence. They probably had information, and the utmost priority is to prevent death. Because if you have violence and the police shoots and there is a death, then there's a funeral and there's another burst of violence. So they wanted to throw cold water on the fire before it spreads.
Already one tweet coming in just saying, I just hope the world is watching every action of the Israeli police. Israel, as usual, starting the killing. That's one tweet just coming in.
I don't understand exactly what they want to say, but there was a right-wing activist who was shot, and then there was the man who was suspected to be the killer was shot during an attempt to arrest him, and the Israeli policy is not without fault on other questions, but I think on Temple Mount, for 47 years, Israel showed. This is maybe the right time to use the term, good faith.
Okay, let's go over the other side of the desk then and ask Majid Messouadine, member of the Front de Gauche and President of Observers in Palestine. That all sounds very reasonable, doesn't it?
Well, the closure of the Al-Aqsa mosque is a provocation, one more, from the Israeli government.
But it was necessary today, wasn't it?
I don't think so. If it was necessary, they would not have reopened it so quickly. So I think that they just listened to what the international community said, that they could not prevent Muslims from praying in Al-Aqsa just because a rabbi was shot in the street. I just want to remind that for a Muslim, a prayer in Al-Aqsa mosque is 500 more important than any other prayer in what we can say ordinary mosque. So closing this site is very sensitive and is lived as a provocation by the Muslims.
But when there are exceptional circumstances,
one day in 47 years,
it's one day. It's one day more. It's one provocation more. I think that doing that, the Israeli government only shows its contempt for the Palestinians, for the Muslims, and for Islam. I've been several times in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and I see how the police treats Muslims when they want to pray. Several times, the Israeli police forbids the access to Palestinians that are less than 40 years. So we can't say that there are no discrimination about this subject. What I want to say is...
When the Jordanians occupied Jerusalem between 49 and 67, they start by expelling all Jews.
It's
not only Zionists, all Jews.
Palestinians are not responsible for what the Jordanians
I'm just
did.
saying, Palestinians actually, we're talking about international law, Palestinians are not a side, because Jerusalem was occupied illegally by Jordan from 49 to 67, and it didn't bother anyone. It didn't bother anyone. They forbidden Jews could not visit Temple Mount between 49 and 67.
It's not about past. Who occupies today?
We are comparing. We're living in
Since 1967,
we're living in a very special
Jerusalem.
And the first thing that Israel did in 67 to say we're going to do the contrary of what did the Jordanians.
Temple Mount. We should be talking about what's happened today, because
yes.
What has happened in the past is obviously now in the past, and the situation that we've had today is that this temple area has been closed, which has obviously upset a great deal of people, as we can see by the reaction there.
Yeah, I think they overreact. There are other issues where their arguments are strong. I think really after 47 years, I don't think that an Arab state would have let Jews have the priority anywhere if they were the occupying party.
It's not about that. We are just talking about the Israeli occupation of Palestine of Jerusalem since 1967.
One day in order to prevent probably death.
The security object is usually used by Israel to justify these
So why only one day in 47 years?
Why? Because they did not dare to do it before. And they saw when they say that it was closed. You saw the declaration of President Abbas. he said it was a declaration of war. He's right. You can't prevent Muslims from praying. Okay. You can't punish collectively Muslims for what someone does. It's not.
I'd like you to listen now to a comment that Benjamin Netanyahu has made. This is about something which he heard Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, say just a few days ago. Let's listen to Benjamin Netanyahu.
A few days ago, I said that we were facing a wave of incitement by radical Islamic elements and by Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas, who said that Jews must be prevented from going up to the Temple Mount by any means possible. I still have not heard from the international community so much as one word of condemnation for these inflammatory remarks. The international community needs to stop its hypocrisy and take action against insiders, against those who try to change the status quo.
So on the one hand, Israel obviously being criticised for closing the site today, but on the other hand, Mahmoud Abbas saying that Jews should be stopped having access to the site.
Well, I think that Mahmoud Abbas is in his role when he says that Jewish should not go in the Temple of Mount, because this is the first step. We know that Yehuda Glick is one of the rabbis who work for the Jews to pray in this mount. He has plans. Charles Anderlin saw his project. He's in its movie. So we know that this is the next step. They want Jews to pray in the Temple of Mount. And we know that this is a huge provocation. We saw what happened when Sharon went in this Temple of Mount in 2000. And I think we don't need such provocation nowadays in Jerusalem. So I think Mahmoud Abbas is right when he says that. And I think that we and the Palestinians don't have any lesson to receive from a prime minister that does not respect daily the international law by occupying, by taking houses, by constructing settlements in Jerusalem and in the West Bank. So I think that the main problem in Jerusalem is the illegally occupied, the annexion of Jerusalem in 1967. This is the main issue, and we should talk about that because the situation in East Jerusalem is very crucial.
Why is June 10th, 67 different from June 5th? June 5th, 67, the same place was occupied illegally by the Jordanians.
With the same apartheid? With the same apartheid?
How come in 5 days everything
With
changed?
the same apartheid?
Of course.
With the same apartheid against Palestinians?
Of course.
Ask the Palestinian that
there was apartheid
under Jordanian.
There was apartheid against Jews.
No. We are talking about today's occupation.
I really think that there are issues where Israel is wrong or where Israel's arguments are not very strong. But on the Temple Mount, even what Netanyahu agrees with him. Netanyahu said, "I don't want to change the status quo. I don't want to allow."
By now.
The situation is the same for 47 years. And Netanyahu said, I agree with Abbas, Jews should not pray on the Temple Mount.
Okay.
This is the Israeli policy for 47 years.
Let's bring some of our other guests in, because otherwise we're not going to get a chance to talk to them before we go to our break. Julien Taron is a political scientist and advisor in the Middle East. I mean, listening to both those opinions, I mean, it really is clear to see, isn't it, why there's so much tension over not only this site, but in Jerusalem as well.
Well, I think the debate is not about who was in control before 67 or after, and even actually it's true. I mean, Jordan did not allow Jews to go to the Temple Mount before.
Or even the wall, the Western Wall.
I would just like to finish my sentence. The idea is actually that now it's Israel, so it's today's ID and not the former responsibility about Jordan. I think that there's two levels of analysis. There's a strategic one, historical one. It's a kind of diplomatic game between Mahmoud Abbas and Hamas and Benjamin Netanyahu, with implication is the inner Israeli politics. So they throw ideas. That's why, for instance, Mahmoud Abbas said, like, it's a declaration of war, because he said, like, they actually can't. And Benjamin Netanyahu says, well, actually, you're responsible for the violence, because actually, well, before that, on the background, Netanyahu really disliked the move from Abbas to Jerusalem. And he said, like, you are responsible for the violence, because actually, well, before that, on the background, Netanyahu really disliked the move from Abbas to Jerusalem. And he said, like, you are responsible for the violence, because actually, well, before that, on the background, Netanyahu really disliked the move from Abbas to recognize a kind of a national union government with Hamas. So that's the diplomatic, strategic level. And there's the base, there's the situation on the ground. And on the ground, people actually live there and try to do things on a day-to-day basis. Like Palestinians try to go to pray, and Jews would like to go to pray as well. So actually, well, there's situations pretty often done when Palestinians sometimes can't access to the Al-Aqsa mosque. So it is not one day in 47 years. It happens sometimes with no reason. So it might be actually security reasons, or it might be like strategic reasons. But the idea that they both fear there's a kind of demographic war, and Palestinians are afraid actually that the far-right branch of the Israeli government will go forward and try to annex Jerusalem, like it said, but I mean like physically, meaning that at the end of the day, they won't have any kind of access. So they're afraid, and the Arab street, well, just is moved by that.
And let's ask Mark Ott as well, who used to be the EU's special representative to the Middle East up until February 2011, joining us from Brussels. I mean, obviously, you've spent many, many years trying to negotiate between the two sides. And once again, we've seen with some of the heated discussion here in the studio just how difficult it is to try and wage some way forward with negotiations.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I would take the today's events in another way. Look at it in another way. First of all, this is not an isolated incident. It is part of a series of recent incidents, not only in Jerusalem but in the West Bank, where Jews and Palestinians have been killed. And that is part of a dangerous and worrying trend of escalation of tensions. So obviously, what we just heard, is that two irreconcilable narratives. It's not new. But I think what should be done now is to lower the tensions and to stop this trend, because not only because of what's happened locally, but also because of the potential spillover in the West Bank, spillover in Israel, spillover in Jordan.
How on earth do you do that, though, with such strong opinions?
Well, I think external parties, friends of Israel and friends of the Palestinians, have to have the courage, like Secretary Kerry said, I think yesterday or today, to insist that people of good sense prevail over sectarian discussions, over fueling sectarian divisions. We see what it does in the rest of the region recently.
OK, Mark Ott, we'll have to leave it there. We'll come back in just a moment. We're going to broaden the discussion right after the break. Also talk about Sweden's decision to formally recognise Palestine. It's after the break. Stay with us.